welcome you all to today's GPG Global Pathway for Girls webinar. I am Farah Ibrahimi and I will be the host of this session today. Before that we begin, I would like to give you all a brief introduction about today's webinar. Our educational mentor will guide you through step by step how you can apply to scholarships. Our educational mentor, Ms. Lobby, has chosen 3 universities that are considered as top-ranked universities in the US in the offer scholarships. So she will guide you to that how you can apply, and she will share some tips that can help you to strengthen your application, and she will walk you through the eligibility criteria. So if you follow these steps and the eligibility criteria, so you can be the winner of these scholarships. So just stay tuned with us till the end of this session.
Hand it over to me first. Thank you, Farah. Hello, everyone. Good morning, or maybe good afternoon or evening, depending on your time. My name is Lamarquanita Lowe. However, you can refer to me as Nita for short. Have a very unique, long name. I will be speaking today about scholarships from the United States of America, but we call ourselves the USA. So just to give a brief background about myself before we start to get into the scholarships, currently I am a final year PhD student at Antioch University. My bachelor's degree I received from Bowling Green State University, and my master's degree I received from the University of Southern California. My current role is very similar to what I'm doing now at San Jose State University. I'm a student academic success specialist, so connecting students to resources, which also include scholarships, and making sure that they make it to the end of their 4 or 2-year journey. So I'm very passionate about making sure that people make it to the end of their education journey, because I know education is the passport to the future. So I am going to share my screen. And so welcome to Global Pathway for Girls. I'm going to start by giving a brief overview of the United States of America. For this webinar, I'll just call us the US or USA, just because it's easier. So the USA, we are located on the North American continent. Above us is Canada, and below us is South America. Our population is huge. The USA is referred to as a melting pot because there are so many different ethnicities, and especially because of different people that migrate and immigrate from different countries. So it's referred to as a melting pot of ethnicities and diversities. The USA is very diverse when it comes to religion and different cultures. So for example, I live in California. Almost every time I go out, I meet someone from a different country. Like, I don't think I've ever met anyone just from like where I grew up at. Music and sports are very huge in the United States. I'm sure you all have probably heard of like the Super Bowl is very huge down here, the NFL. As far as our political landscape, the USA is a democracy. Our slogan is the American dream. So meaning that anyone that comes to the US, that if you work hard and you achieve to the highest, that you can be what you want to be. As I mentioned, there's a different mix of religions. The US is very huge in what we refer to as technological innovation. I live in Palo Alto, which is Silicon Valley, which is like the hub of technology. So it's the birth of companies like Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Tesla. So if you are interested in those careers, Silicon Valley is a huge place, and California is a huge place for that. But other top careers in the US are also healthcare, finance, renewable energy, and any type of skilled trade. So skilled trades will be things like carpentry, those like artisan trades that are, hard to come by. The important part, our higher education system, we have approximately 4,000 accredited institutions. I mentioned accredited because accredited institutions are really important, especially if you ever have to transfer to another university. You want to make sure that your institution is accredited. This includes a mix of private and public universities, liberal art colleges, community colleges, and also for-profit entities. As far as the structure of the US, it's kind of like a tier structure. So usually some people start with community colleges, which is a little bit more affordable. Those are usually your local colleges, which includes your associate degrees. What we'll be focusing on today is the college and the university level, which we'll focus today on bachelor's, but it also offers your master's and, if you want to continue graduate degrees like JD, medical, EDD, and PhD. And so the 3 scholarships and locations and universities that we're going to focus on today, the first one is Pepperdine University. The second one is Ohio State University. And then the third one is Stanford University. And so just to give an overview of Pepperdine University is located in Malibu, California. It's also referred to kind of like as the beach town because they have a lot of natural landscapes and just a lot of cool places you can relax as far as where the water comes to. Pepperdine is a private Christian nonprofit four-year university. I always think it's important to look at what type of university it is. So for example, if you know that it's a private, you know that maybe they're a little bit more small, maybe more family niche, and they might focus more on research. Four-year university means they probably offer degrees from the bachelor's all the way up into the graduate level. As far as housing, for most of these universities I will be sharing today, I'm sharing information about housing that's on campus because for international students, most of these universities, I think, require international students to stay on campus their first year. So Pepperdine University does have housing where you can roommate with other people. Their common housing includes resident halls and suite mates. Average pricing ranges from $7,000 to $9,000 per semester. And always look at their system to see if they're quarter semester or trimester. As far as transit services, they have a mix of transit services such as vans, buses, share ride services, which is like your Lyft and your Uber. And then as far as employment, if you are an F1 student, you are allowed to be employed on campus, very similar to Ohio State and Stanford, as long as, you know, the employment doesn't replace, students that are, I think, US citizens. And so Ohio State University, I actually grew up in Ohio. I've never been to the campus. Ohio State is a public land grant research university that's located in Columbus, Ohio. Columbus is also the capital of Ohio. So with the capital, they have pretty much like the hub of everything in Columbus. It's the 14th largest city in the United States, so it's really huge. As far as the city, Columbus, they are known kind of for everything. So like the restaurant, shopping, they have a lot of historic neighborhoods, a lot of museums, sports, entertainment. This university is located next to an airport, which gives you access to other major cities in the US. So for example, Washington, DC, New York, Chicago. As far as housing, very similar to Pepperdine, they encourage first-year students and international students to live on campus. Options are apartments, residence halls, and the average price for housing is $5,200 per semester. And very similar to Pepperdine, transit services mix, so, buses, van, rideshare services. And they also offer employment for F1 or J1 status students, and it includes a mix of curricular practical training or optional practical training. So I would say just kind of look up their website and kind of see what those options are for there. And then I'm sorry, I forgot to mention what the scholarships were. The Ohio State scholarship we're going to be discussing is the International Student Grant. For Pepperdine, we're going to be discussing the Regent Scholars Award. And then for Stanford University, and I'll discuss a little bit more later why this is very specific for Stanford. We'll be talking about the American India Foundation, AIF Buy-in Impact Fellowship. Stanford University is located in, that should not say Ohio, California. California. It's in Stanford, California. I also would like to say about Stanford, if you were to research Stanford and look up the city, sometimes you will see Palo Alto listed. That's because they're like one. So if you ever look up Stanford, you might see the city located as Palo Alto because Stanford is located within Palo Alto City, the campus. Stanford University is a private research university in Stanford, California. It's located in Silicon Valley, as we discussed above, which is known for innovation in research and technology. Stanford, they offer multiple fields, including arts, natural sciences, engineering, education, medicine. Stanford is mainly also known for medicine, which is the top healthcare industry. So if you're interested in the healthcare industry, Stanford is the place to go. Very similar to above, they have residence hall, apartments, suites, and row houses that averages around $4,500 semester. They also offer on-campus mealing. Stanford also encourages first-year and international students to live on campus. I would say the only difference as far as transportation is biking is huge. Stanford is located in Silicon Valley just because the transportation system here is very challenging. Even as I was getting here, I was like, oh my gosh, it's just a lot of traffic. So they encourage people to use rideshare and also to use biking. You'll also see a lot of people use scooters. So let's get into the fun part. So I'm going to start with Pepperdine University. And so this scholarship that we're going to focus on today is called the Regent Scholars Award. And so like most scholarships, it's very competitive. And so only the top 10% of students admitted into the first year class are selected for this award. So that means incoming freshmen that apply to this program. But the positive about this is the award amount is huge. They offer $20,000 a year. I'm not quite sure what their total tuition is, but just for me knowing awards, that's a huge amount. So 20,000 a year, and they offer it for 4 years. So that pretty much covers you for, your 4 entire years of your bachelor's program. Other great benefits of this award is they have common housing. So meaning if you get into this award program, you're kind of like within your own housing unit together. You have your own academic community. They have seminars that you can attend, special events that you can attend. You have access to, it looks like, administrative people within the university, and you can attend conferences. So not only is it good for financing you and providing your housing and of course your tuition, it also connects you to a lot of networking. And networking is huge, especially when it comes to employment. As far as the eligibility criteria, there are only two main things. So this is an application that you don't have to apply for. Like most scholarships, you have to submit an external application. This is something that you submit with your admission. So you're automatically considered once you apply for whatever program. So for example, let's just say if you are applying for engineering, usually there will be a section in your admissions application that asks, would you like to be considered for the scholarship? And you would just check it off. But to be able to be considered, you do have to take the SAT, ACT, or COT, and your scores. They didn't list what the scores have to be, but it just said it has to be a high score. You must maintain a 3.25 Pepperdine cumulative GPA and also full-time status if you receive this award. As I mentioned, as far as the application process, there's no external application. It's when you apply through whatever program that you're applying to for admissions, and then you have to submit your scores as a part of this process to be considered for the application. And so you'll see for deadlines, because there is no start or end date, you just want to make sure that you pay attention to the deadline of the program that you're applying to when you apply for this scholarship. And then these are the links. So the main link to Pepperdine's website, and also a direct link to the scholarship. And then as far as tips for success, especially if you've never, especially if you've never taken the SAT or ACT before, my suggestion would be to study 1 year in advance. It sounds like a far out time to take a test for a program you're applying to. Reason is because if for some reason, if you don't receive a high score the first round, you want to make sure that you give yourself enough time to retake the test. So like I know, for example, some tests may not offer tests until 3 months after you take the original test. And if you're on an admissions deadline, you might not have 3 months to retake a test. So I always encourage people for any scholarships for SAT, ACT, you want to start planning that test 1 year in advance, but hopefully get a high score the first round. So just leave yourself that space. Okay, we're going to head into the second scholarship, which is at Ohio State University. This scholarship is the International Student Grant. So this scholarship is offered through Ohio State University through the Office of International Affairs. It's important to note that this is a grant because grants are things that you don't, have to pay back. They're like free money. These grants are intended to help international students within 2 semesters of graduation who have demonstrated financial need to complete their degree. So there are a few requirements for the international student grant. It says you must be a non-immigrant international student in F1 or J1 status. Of course, must be enrolled in a degree granting program, which is, like your bachelor's program. If you were looking at other grants at Ohio State, you want to make sure that you haven't applied to any yet, because they will only consider you for this grant if you haven't applied to other scholarships in the university. We'll kind of skim past some of this, the important part. And you also want to make sure that you keep a GPA of a 2.5 as an undergraduate student. As far as the requirements for the international student grant, very similar to Pepperdine. This is something that you're considered for when you apply for admissions through your program. And so I will discuss later kind of like what can make you stand out. So just make sure to pay attention to the deadlines of whatever your admissions application is for your program. And as I said before, usually when you do your admissions application, there will be like a section asking, would you like to be considered for this grant? And just make sure you check it off since there's no external application. And then this is the link to the website and also the link to the international student grant. And like I said, pay attention to the admissions deadline. And I would say a huge thing with grants, my tip, most grant, especially admissions applications, require you to write a personal statement. And usually when it comes to grants, they are looking at your personal statement. So I would say write a detailed personal statement that outlines your academic, your personal, and your community service achievements. Usually when I used to review personal statements in the past, I think sometimes people think they're just about your academics, but for grants, they're looking at the whole picture. They're trying to see what type of person you are. So you want to make sure, like, even though this is an institution and it's academic, that you also talk about your personal life. Leave a section where you talk about, you can talk about your struggles, how you overcame those struggles. If you're volunteering, in your community or at a school, make sure to really highlight those things. Okay, and then our last scholarship, our fellowship that we are going to talk about is at Stanford University. And this is the American India Foundation AIF Bayan Impact Fellowship. So before I begin this, especially if you do your own research for future scholarships at Stanford, because Stanford is a research institution, unlike what you saw with Pepperdine and Ohio State, they don't offer merit-based scholarships for international students. They only offer it for athletics. So I say that to say you will notice a lot of their fellowships and scholarships are very specific. So for example, it might be a scholarship for African Americans, a scholarships with students from India. They're very, very particular. But the good thing with that is because they're very catered and very particular, it's kind of like they take care of you if you fit that category. So even though some of us might not be from India, I would like to share this as an example to show what you will see, for example, if you were to apply to a similar scholarship. So this one is called the Bayan Impact Fellowship. And so fellowships are usually scholarships where you are doing work. There are scholarships where you're networking, and there are scholarships where you're trying to make connections for not only while you're in undergrad, but also after you graduate. So even though this is a volunteer service program, the reason that I mentioned this is because this places you kind of like at the networking hub of Stanford. So it says the BIF places in professionals from the US and India with communities and organizations across 2 countries. The fellows work closely with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So it's pretty much a social impact fellowship. The eligibility for this is a US citizen, permanent resident, or citizen of India. So that it also includes international students from India. Like I said, they're very specific. You must be 21 through 34 years old. This one is more so targeted for people that are international students that are enrolled that will be completing their BS. The age is the same. We'll kind of skim past that. I won't read through all of this. You all can kind of read through, but like I said, you can see it's very specific. So for example, it says you have to have the COVID-19 vaccine, and that's probably because you'll be working, with a lot of different people. And then I will say for this, and this is very similar to other type of scholarships and fellowships with Stanford, they're very particular about what skills can you bring, especially since they're a research institution. So for example, it says, for this application, you must have strong professional skills, you must have a background of volunteer service, and just, credentials, whatever that might look like for you. Most of Stanford's fellowships and scholarships, including this one, you have to be fluent in English. They require, for most of their fellowships and scholarships, a minimum of 2 references. Most of their references are completed online. Give me one second. And I mentioned online because they require a referral system that's usually private, so they can make sure that the reference is coming from the professionals that are recommended through the application. And then a huge thing also with Stanford's applications and their recommendations, they're looking for people that have been like your supervisors, so professors or people that you have volunteered with that can really speak to your academics and community service. So even though this deadline has passed, I still listed it for the future. Their deadline is February 15th. As you see, it says they do not have a application process, so it's year-round enrolling, but they encourage you to start in February for this application. And then, so sorry, one sec. And then this is the website for Stanford and the website for the fellowship. And then, as I mentioned before, not just for this fellowship, but even other international scholarships and fellowships for Stanford, they put a huge focus on community service. So making sure that if there's a personal essay attached, that you really talk about your community service, your volunteer work, and of course your academics, and then demonstrate your passion for community-based development in your application. And that is the last of our scholarships.
Thank you, Ms. Levy, for sharing your incredible insights with us today and giving your precious time. It means a lot to us, and thank you all for joining. But before we wrap up the session, I would like to tell our listeners that our team, media team, has shared the links of our social media platforms. Just to stay connected with us for future opportunities, just you can simply click the links and you can follow us. So thanks again for you all to join this webinar. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.